Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to 𝗥𝗵𝗲 show. Thank you for always tuning in. 80% is showing up, and we so truly appreciate each and every one of you who tunes in and week out to listen, learn, and grow. Today, Ria is going to be taking over the conversation, but before I do bring my co-host Ria on, I want to introduce myself. My name is 𝗥𝗵𝗲.
My name is Ria, and
And welcome
to
to
our
our show. Ria, gonna pass the mic to you.
thanks, Alka. And today is a topic from the book of Robert Kiyosaki, Increase Our IQ. So let me share my screen with all of you. Right. So today's topic is learning to win using our whole brain. So according to Robert Kiyosaki, there is a famous quote by Warren Buffett, who once said that you have to think for yourself. It always amazes me how high IQ people mindlessly imitate. It always amazes me how high IQ people mindlessly imitate. Very interesting. And why that is, I will discuss below. So according to Robert, him being an educational interpreter, Robert began teaching students to think outside the box and to create rather than to imitate. And when he says imitate, it's how the high IQ people imitate. Robert was surprised at how frightening this teaching process was for many of his students. Most had been so frightened into needing job security or a magic formula for investing and avoiding mistakes that breaking the bonds of that fear was the hardest part of Robert's job. These were smart, successful, well-educated people who wanted to make changes. Robert's job as a teacher was to show his students how to use their primary intelligence and all three brains to win financially. Robert's way to get people's attention, he would often say, A students, and these are the high IQ people, A students work for the C students. So C students are the students that are not the brightest. The brightest are the A students. So A students, they work for the C students, not the smartest students in the class. And the B students, they are in the middle, they work for the government. So A students, they work for the C students. Very interesting. It is very controversial. And the B students, the middle, they work for the government. Robert says this obviously did not make the A students happy. I would imagine why. But they got over it once Robert explained the logic behind his findings. That A student works for the C students. Now, poor and the middle class dialects. So according to Robert, neuroscientists have recently discovered that the brain has mirror neurons. So what they are, so this is the neuron, it's a nerve cell. And the brain thinks that there is another neuron. So that's why they call it a mirror neuron. So when a nerve cell sees, when a nerve cell looks in the mirror, he's exactly the same thing. So that's why they call it mirror neuron. Many of these scientists believe this discovery is more important than the discovery of the DNA. Mirror neuron is more important than the discovery of the DNA. A neural mirror is overly, in simple terms, is monkey see, monkey do. So this monkey is looking at the mirror. When he see another monkey, That's what he do. It's like a copycat, right? This is the neuron activation. So when the monkey sees another monkey, then he also will try to do whatever this monkey is doing. So if he's eating a banana, then this monkey will also do the same thing. Monkey see, monkey do. Or the famous quote, the birds of a feather flock together. So whatever one bird does, the others follow. Monkey see, monkey do, mirror neurons. That is, our brains are programmed to imitate what we see others do. The brains are programmed to imitate what we see others do. And Robert says it explained why the quant fund managers invest in the same stock. And if you remember, the quant fund is a fund where there are fund managers, but they rely basically on the computer. The computer does all the computation, and it tells the fund manager how and where to invest it based on the statistics, based on the analysis made by the computer. And this is why Robert says this explains why the quant fund managers invest in the same stock. So when there's a down, then all of the quant fund managers' stocks they invested goes the same way. It goes down. Why? Because they invest in what the computers tell them to do. And this is why, according to Robert, why poor people stay poor even though they earn a lot of money. Interesting. So people stay poor even though they earn a lot of money. So it's not just the poor people, but also the middle class or the high IQ people. They stay poor even though they earn a lot of money. And also Robert says, and this is why a child raised in England will speak a different dialect of English with a different accent than a child born in the United States or Australia. It copies what the accent is of that particular country, even though it's English, but then because the English have a different accent, so the child born in English will have that, born in England, born in Europe will have that accent compared to United States or Australia. So to continue, mirror neurons of dialect and accent limit the scope of our world as who we associate with. It limits the scope of our world as to who we associate with. So many kids have a tough time leaving Hawaii. So Robert is from the family in Hawaii. So that's why he talks about kids having kids about, in Hawaii, because he was raised and born in Hawaii. So many kids have a tough time leaving Hawaii because their dialect of English is Pidgin English. Kids from Hawaii who speak Pidgin often go mainland schools. And why big Hawaiian clubs? So they can feel comfortable. Many of the kids at Union School spoke Pidgin. Now the kids from Riverside School were forbidden to speak it. Robert believes this made a tremendous difference in his life and why he went to school in New York and not at the University of Hawaii. So, in the world of business and investing, poor people speaks a poor person's dialect. So, when it comes to business and investing, poor people speak a poor person's dialect. Instead of using the language of business and investing, people say such as the government programs, the government welfare, the government assistance. So these are the dialects of the poor. Government programs, government welfare, government assistance. And that's what their language is. Now the middle class has a different dialect. The middle class would say, oh, we've got to diversify, or we've got to live below our means. Very interesting. That's what the middle class would say. That's their dialect. Diversify, live below your means. Buffett, the richest investor in the world, says, it is not that I want money, it's the fun of making my money and watching it grow. Again, this is an example of a different English dialect, reflecting a different mirror neuron. So that means that the high class, right, the higher income class, or the businessmen, the investors, they speak differently. Their dialect would be, what can I invest my money? How can I make my money grow? And therefore, they do not want the money, but it's all about the process of making and watching their money multiply. So let me know in the comment section below what you've learned in today's topic, and stay tuned for more of Alka and Ria show.
Yeah, you know what? That is really that's such a great point, because I took a lot of notes, and what I want to point out is, like you said, create but not imitate, and it also comes down to how our thinking, and how most of us were programmed, and especially like the poor people, their language, the behavior, their accent, the actions. So it comes down to also, create but don't compete. And for some people, brought up how they were raised, they compete because they think that is the natural progression. They think that is what they need to do. Right? So it
Right.
comes down to the same point.
So two things from that, right? Number one, it's always about competing against yourself. It's not about competing against others. Never ever compete, among others, because there's always going to be a smarter person than you are. There's always going to be a person that's more lucky.
No, that is right. They do. There are, but some people's mentality is, oh, I need to compete because that is how they were brought up, right? So that's what I'm saying.
That gives us a good point to discuss here, which means that it is our environment which
Right.
plays a critical factor. Because, for example, if a poor person speaks the dialect, oh, government welfare, government assistance, I need to have this, right? Government funding. Now, the only way for that person to change is to change the environment. So let's say that poor person was brought to a middle class family, was raised in the middle class family, then that person can see things differently. Then he can, because remember what Robert Kiyosaki says, our neurons, right? We are programmed, monkey see, monkey do. We are programmed to imitate. So when that person is taken from the poor environment and transferred to the middle class, then what he sees is way different. So now he elevates status. He's not speaking the dialect of poor, and hopefully his future is not poor. It lifted up. It depends on his ambition, his drive, and his environment now, right?
Oh, yeah.
Him to better himself. Now, let's say that because he's brought up, he went to school, he's raised by a beautiful, family, then he starts going, his family brings him to conferences. His family brings him to, like a business, a mentor. Then that person from the poor family now is exposed to a businessman, an entrepreneur, who he may shadow, right? He may work for that company. And because he's a astute individual, because he is absorbing what that businessman is doing to his company, then he has the potential to be a business person himself. Environment of where we're immersed, very importantly, plays a role. So that's why if we need to change what others say, get out of your environment. Stay away from the old friends that you were dealing with during middle school, or during, you've been dealing with for a very long time, and go have new friends. If you're living in the same environment for the rest of your teenage life, for the 20, 30 years, and you are seeing other people succeed, then go to where those
Yeah.
people are hanging out. Again, environment.
Absolutely. And you know what? I heard someone say, if you stay poor, then that's bad luck. But if you don't do anything about it and you don't change it, well, that's shame on you. So it's shame on you because you don't want to change and
Yeah.
how you want to change. And that same point where you just said, is that oh, go ahead and I'll just share
Yeah.
my point because this is great.
So I'm talking about being born, right? So when we are born poor, it is not our fault. But if we stay poor, then that is our fault.
That's what I'm saying, and that's shame on you because you don't want to change. So that is right. But okay, it's the same point again. I think Bob Proctor, he talked about this, and I think this is also very interesting, alluding to the point that you just made. So if you take a baby who was born in, say, China, you take that same baby, as we know, babies, they're like sponges. When they were born, they hear everything in the tummy, and when they're born, they're very susceptible. They like absorb everything like sponges around their environment, everything. You take that same baby and you take the baby to Hawaii, you take the baby to Europe, and that same baby who was maybe born in a poor family, who is now being adopted, and that baby is now born into, say, a rich or a middle class family, alluding to what you just said, which is great. That same baby who, learns to speak, maybe they're not Chinese or Mandarin, but they're now speaking fluent English. So is your environment, but it also comes down to what I think is, whether a child is adopted or not, right? But does that child want to, or whether that child comes from a poor family or not? But the question always comes down to, what are you willing to do? How are you willing to grow in your life? How, just because your circumstances is how it is, doesn't mean it can't change.
Right.
So, right? So that is my question, is that, always look at how can you improve? Doesn't matter your circumstances, because your setback is only your comeback to becoming stronger. But how are you going to become stronger and to change your life? Is to take those actions and to say, well, look, I don't want to be poor because I know what that felt like. I know what that looks like. I don't want to do that.
Amen.
Right? I don't want to do that. So you have to know, your circumstance of where you were born. Maybe your family environment, maybe your parents don't tell you, like, if you're adopted, that is, that this is where you were brought up, and now you want to change your life. But do you think people coming from as a doctor, you talk about neuroscience and all that, and I love all, I think, doing neuroscience and physics and all that, but do you think it's people who, whether you're adopted or not, but do you think psychologically that plays a huge impact on a child's life?
Well, again, it brings about, exposure environment, right? Because if your exposure is different, then that thing can change. If you
Mm.
were born and raised, from a poor family, of course, you have some psychological, financial, personal, exposure to that, right? And the only way to get out of that is, number one, to forgive yourself, because it is not to your own doing. But second is to get unstuck, to not just be contented of what you have. And number three, I think, is also believing in God, that, that there is a greater being, there is God, that can help change you and be better, that you can be a better person. So,
So you got to have faith.
of course, amen, all the time. You got to have faith.
Mm, yeah, faith and belief, they do go hand in hand. But isn't that easy said than done? Like, some people might be listening, or they might be saying, well, I do want to strive to be better. I do want to do better in my life and in myself. But then isn't it easier said than done to say, oh, but have faith and believe, and you can.
Have challenges, right? And it's always up to us how we deal with that challenge. Some may give up and, and end their lives or quit and, or, break up. But again, it depends on how weak our faith is, because if our faith is weak, then we succumb to those. But if our faith is strong, that's not the end all be all. There's always a brighter future ahead. And it's up to us, right, to continue to seek that guidance from the Lord. And number two, to improve ourselves. If we're stuck in this situation, then we need to go to other places where it, best fits us, right? We cannot just stay where we are because it's difficult. We have to uproot ourselves, change ourselves for the better, surround ourselves. That's why I believe, like, if you're a business or an entrepreneur, and you are, having challenges, it's good to be exposed to conferences, to events, or to have a meeting with other like-minded people, because then you see the light at the end of the tunnel. You see how they are succeeding. You see that there is hope for you if you are failing. Question, how are they able to do it? It's always a question about how. It's not like I cannot do it, but it's also how can they succeed? And why can I not succeed? What are they doing that makes them succeed?
Right. What do you lack that maybe some people feel that they lack?
Right.
And why do you feel that? Why do you feel you lack?
What are they doing? And what can I do so that I can get myself out of this situation and improve myself?
Right. And
the environment, right?
The environment. Exactly. And and the poor person's language is also, I can't do this. I can't learn. I can't succeed. But then if you're going to keep on affirming to yourself, but I can't and I can, but the question you need to ask yourself, how can I? How can I learn? How can I be more adaptive to my situations? How can I be more adaptive? How? It's not I can't.
That's right.
So that's the language people need to change.
There's a saying, if you say you can, and if you say you cannot.
Right. Right. Yes. Exactly.
So say I can instead of saying I cannot, because why? You are right, regardless.
Exactly. Otherwise, Ria, this is such a great conversation. You and I can keep talking the whole day about this because we can. But guys, you know what? Drop it in the chat. What was the aha moment that you got? What was your one takeaway that you have learned from this conversation? So drop it in the chat. And we have come to the end of another awesome conversation, awesome show. Stay tuned for more 𝗥𝗵𝗲 show. We'll see you at the same time, same place, come tomorrow morning. See you then. And always make the rest of the day the best of your day, and always challenge yourself. Always challenge so that you are growing every single day and growing and learning. So knowledge is power, but knowledge is only as powerful is if you implement on what we sharing with you on our show, right? So if you implement on what you're learning every day, when I ask you to challenge yourself, when we ask you to drop, what have you learned? And then only are you growing and seeing the results in your life. So we will see you at the same time, same place tomorrow morning. And we appreciate each and every one of you who always tunes in and joins us. Bye for now, guys. Thank you, Ria.